Sheila Doris Newsom Bushell, née Bushell Jamie. She was my mother, and who died 2 years ago, sadly. She was born in Davenport Road in 1930 to William and Doris Bushell, hence the Doris. She had a brother Billy who was killed in France in 1944 and has a tree next door to her bench. And she has a sister, or did have a sister, called Betty. Mum was educated at the Coventry Preparatory School in Malvern. However, her schooling was much disrupted by the war as she was evacuated to Shropshire. I think Mum attended 5-6 schools in total. And I think that's a bit of me reading my phone, but thinking about my mother, she really didn't have a good schooling at all. She was quite, I think, unhappy, I think, some of the time. Obviously, her brother was killed during that time, and her mother became very ill because of it. And I think it wasn't great. Anyway, better things were to come, you can hear me. At the end of her schooling, Mum chose nursing and midwifery as a career and attended the Middlesex Hospital in London in 1948. She came back to Coventry to look after her mother after a few years, and she worked in she used to call it the Carsley Hospital, but it probably known to about Kersley Hospital, which was the maternity hospital in Coventry, and anybody who was born between 1952 or 1956 would probably had my mother as their midwife, actually, probably. She eventually met Dad, Dr. Jamie, Dougal Jamie, who was a Dundonian, and married in 1955, and settled in Someway Grove, Stychel, which is really not far away from here. Basically, where this bench is halfway between Davenport Road and Someway Grove in Stychel. They had 3 children: Anita, who sadly died just before Christmas, and has a bench on the other side of the park, and myself, Ian, and Colin. They were married for 47 years. Dad died in 2002, a great loss. He has a tree next door to Anita. She loved sports, my mother did. She used to say to me, it was the only thing I was any good at school was tennis and netball and hockey, because she used to be she would admit quite freely that she wasn't the brightest girl in the world. Became captain of the Finham Golf Club in 1993. All animals and birds were another passion, and she would hold coffee mornings to raise money for the RSPCA. She had a very soft inside, my mother, but she also had a slightly hard exterior, almost Victorian. It was typical of that time, I think, really, with what she had to put up with, as did many mums and dads who grew up during the war in Coventry. Mum and Nita were great friends. That's my sister, who's sadly not with us anymore, who actually was born with cerebral palsy, and I think that really created a bond between my mother and my sister. Anita's problems. So the mother was a devoted mother, and she always trying to help Anita, especially towards the end of her life. And she longed for Anita's visits, because Anita never didn't live near here, so she used to come up, and my mother used to long for it, even though my brother and I would do our best to keep her happy. So does that give you a bit of a kind of a background to my mother?
It does. It's lovely. Tell me what sort of mum she was. You've said she could be a little Victorian.
Yeah.
Which was of the time.
Yeah, she would keep, when I used to talk about her nursing career, she would be absolutely smart. The sister on the ward would, like the military, they would go up and down. Any hair clip out of place was a big sin in those days. She would look incredibly, and all they did was clean the floors of the hospitals and sit on the patients' beds and talk to them. That's all they used to do. Well, coming back to your question, our kitchen was absolutely like the operating theatre, absolutely spotless. And I used to come in from school and find my mother on her knees scrubbing the floor. But she was a great nurse, and I'm told, and when my father was left hospital medicine and took up as a general practitioner, she would always answer the phone to the patients and say, well, I don't think Dougal should come out to you quite now. Just take a paracetamol and lie down. She was very good at fending off people. and that used to make her laugh a bit. But because obviously my father was one of the people that set up the National Health Service, so she would always make sure that he wasn't always on call.
You have explained about the position of the bench in the park,
Yeah.
but why the park?
The memorial park was the fulcrum in my mother's life. She was born in on the one side in Davenport Road, and she would come into the park with her mother and Mary McGuinness, who they were great friends, still are, well, obviously mother's dad, but they were great friends. And they would come and walk around the park and love the aviary and the peacock. They used to love the peacock. And so my mother used to talk about that as a little girl, how she loved her little walks in the park and the ice cream at the cafe. Fond memories of that. So the park is really central to our existence as a family, and certainly for her, yeah.
What do you think she would think about you taking part in this and speaking about her for the general public to listen to?
Well, Mother was a Coventrian, and her father, Colonel Bushell, was the honorary colonel from the Royal Warwickshire Regiment, 7th Battalion, which is the Coventry Battalion, and he used to walk up the road to the cenotaph on, a Remembrance Sunday, and she used to see her father do that, lead the parade, and she loved everything to do with Coventry. She was very proud to be a Coventrian, and so to have a bench here, looking at the aviary, looking at Sunway Grove, but not too far away from her home, is just such a perfect situation in a perfect park. We've all enjoyed this park, including me as a youngster, and I still love it now. I think she'd be delighted.